Hey there, internet friends, and welcome to That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality you expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions. If you like the show, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Joining me once again, as always, Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cameron?
Hey, what's going up, everybody? Or what's going on, everyone?
What's going up indeed? No Logan this week, even though I teased him last week. He had a last minute thing come up at school, so he was unable to join us, which is a shame because I think he would have had, he always has fun with these Treehouse of Horror episodes, and B, one of them having such a heavy 007 Pierce Brosnan influence, I think would have been just right on the money for him. So, oh well, hope you're doing well, Logan. You are missed. As I said, today we're going to be talking about Treehouse of Horror 10, 11, and 12. This was Season 11, Episode 4, and then the season premieres of Seasons 12 and 13. Why do we pick it? Because this has become kind of our traditional Halloween end-of-the-month thing for the last couple years. So we are wrapping up Halloween month 2024 here, doing our fourth medley of Treehouse of Horror episodes. So shout out to that fun. Some history here. The first episode that we're talking about today, Treehouse of Horror episode 10, was originally released on Halloween, October 31st, 1999. And then Treehouse of Horror episode 11 was the first one released after Halloween on November 1st, 2000. And then Treehouse of Horror 12 continued that trend, also airing the week after Halloween, November 6th, 2001. So because we weren't going to have any box office trivia to play with this time, I did pull a couple of questions kind of based around those little factoids that I wanted to throw to you, Cameron, and Logan, had he been here. Along with Treehouse of Horror 10, only one other Treehouse of Horror episode originally aired on Halloween. Which one? And hint, it is one that we have already covered before. So really, it's just kind of a guessing game, unless you have an encyclopedic knowledge of the calendar for these. So or if you remember from like when we talked about it, because I probably had it in the trivia of like, this is the first one on Halloween.
This is the thing. I have not always been on the Treehouse of Horror
episodes. Treehouse of Horror stuff.
I will. It's like 1 through 9, basically. It's like
That's what I'm saying. Is it's largely just a crapshoot.
Yeah. I would go ahead and say let's go with 6.
6. No, it was Treehouse of Horror episode 2.
Oh, there you go.
Which released October 31st, 1991. And for reference, that was the Treehouse of Horror that featured the Monkey's Paw segment,
yes.
The Bart Zone, where Bart turns Homer into a Jack-in-the-Box, which we see the Jack-in-the-Box in the beginning of one of these episodes, as well as If I Only Had a Brain, where Burns puts Homer's brain into a robot Frankenstein style. So that was the only other Halloween proper release of Treehouse of Horror. Trivia question number 2. Treehouse of Horror 11 and 12 begin the trend of episodes airing after Halloween. Mm-hmm. How long will it be until we get another Treehouse of Horror episode before the holiday? So, like, what is the first Treehouse of Horror after these couple that will be back before Halloween? How long is this run of post-Halloween episodes going to be?
Can you give me a hint of like how many we got going on so far?
I will say there are 35 Treehouse of Horror episodes thus far.
Well, I mean, if we just go like basic, like generic thing, it's like, well, normal, like, and it doesn't really fit because 2 to 10 is the like airing on Halloween. I'm gonna say leaning at 19.
19, close. Treehouse of Horror 20 is the next Treehouse of Horror episode that will air before Halloween. So 11 through 19 are all released after Halloween.
No, that makes sense. Okay, I get that.
It does not make any sense to me.
Sorry, I take it back. I keep on thinking this is like based off of like calendars, and it's not. It's based off of television schedule.
Yeah, it's based off of television. Like the fact
I'm so dumb.
And in so many cases, like these couple episodes, they are the first episodes of the season. So it's like, oh, instead of a sitcom airing, starting in September, like The Simpsons aren't hitting their start dates until November 1st, November 6th, and like that first week of November. And so it's always like you couldn't just get it done a week earlier to get your Treehouse of Horror episode in before Treehouse of Horror, but like before Halloween. Why? Whatever. Okay. So that was Treehouse of Horror 20 was October 18th, 2009. That's the first, like every other Treehouse of Horror between 11 and 19 end up being November debuts.
Weird, but all right.
And speaking, or like in that vein, again, of the 35 Treehouse of Horrors, and that's including the one that is airing this year, which I believe is also airing after Halloween. Let me see. This year's Treehouse of Horror is going to air on November 3rd, and that will be Treehouse of Horror 35. So, including that one, how many air after Halloween?
After Halloween.
I've already given you a good chunk of everything between 11 and 19 are going to be post-Halloween.
Yeah, so it's a question of how many after that and then how many before.
No, there are none before.
None before, okay.
None before 11, because, as I said, like 11 and 12 are the first ones that air after Halloween. Everything else, everything thus far that we've covered on the previous episodes aired pre-Halloween or on Halloween. So 11 and 12 are the first that air in November. How many others air in November after?
12?
12? Again, very close. 13. and if you want to go how many have done so thus far, you are right on the money.
Okay.
At 12. I'm counting 13 because 35 is already slated to air.
That makes sense. Okay.
In 2 weeks. But yes, they are so 11 through 19, as we've already talked about. Then 20 airs before the holiday. Then 21 goes back to after the holiday. But then we get a good chunk of pre-Halloween episodes there. And the next one won't be until episode 31, and then 34 last year, and 35 this year.
Okay.
So yeah, 13 episodes total, including this year's, all air post-Halloween. So there we go. So this is just a fun little bit of like scheduling Treehouse of Horror trivia for you. Other releases of the time, as we do often in these Treehouse of Horror medley episodes, I go through kind of, instead of doing our usual, like, here are the few movies that came out, prior to this one, and here are the ones that came out after. I go through each year to be like, here were the big horror movies of that year. So in 1999, coinciding with episode 10, we had Idle Hands that had come out in April.
Hey, Idle Hands, let's go.
We had a little movie called The Blair Witch Project.
That's right.
July 14th, 1999. Another little movie called The Sixth Sense. August 6th, 1999. House on a Haunted Hill was probably the most like, hey, coming out at Halloween time. That was October 29th. And then right after that, Sleepy Hollow, which is another kind of spooky vibes.
I love Sleepy Hollow.
November 19th. And I will say two of those movies, which you can probably guess, were top 10 movies that year. So shout outs to The Blair Witch Project, which I believe was like number 10.
Yeah.
And The Sixth Sense, which I believe was number 2 that year in 1999. Falling only behind The Phantom Menace, I believe. So yeah. In 2000, coinciding with Treehouse of Horror episode 11, we had Scream 3 came out in February 4th of that year, the third installation of that franchise. We had another kind of cult classic that has traumatized so many people of my generation to never drive behind big old log trucks. Final Destination was March 17th, St. Patrick's Day release. Less horror and more psycho thriller, but American Psycho was
for sure.
April 14th. Scary Movie, just taking the piss out of scary movies, was July 7th, 2000. And then hot on the success of the previous year's movie, they turned around Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2, October 27th, 2000. Too much less fanfare, I think. Because the other thing I like, for especially younger audiences, the thing you have to remember about Blair Witch Project is this was early internet days, so people fucking did not know if it was real or not.
Nobody knew.
People, the whole marketing campaign around that was genius and could not be done today.
Yeah.
Because it was like, no, this is like found footage. It is the beginning of the found footage horror genre, basically, of like, oh, this is, we found this documentary that somebody was making, and it's, and it is, terrifying, uncovered kind of stuff. And people were like, oh my God, like, no, did you see?
Yeah. There's only like one movie that ever tried to do found footage, and it had to basically spoil itself. And it was like Cannibal Crew, like some like old like Italian horror movie. They tried to do that and then didn't go well. Like basically they're like, the people who are in this movie were eaten.
Yeah. That was another thing. Like it was like no big names, no name stars or anything like that. Wasn't doing the rounds in terms of like a press, junket kind of thing.
It was not going to
crazy word of mouth on Blair Witch Project.
And it was nothing about like, no, it was never at any festivals. It was just outside of any press whatsoever.
Yeah.
And so traditional media, like magazines, Entertainment Tonight, weekly stuff like that was doing no coverage for it. But all of a sudden this movie, people are like, I think it's real.
Yeah. And I guess there is a degree of like that element could absolutely, trick a whole bunch of conspiracy nuts today. But I think there'd be enough people being like, no, guys, it's fake. Like, whatever.
There's way too many people who do media analysis for a job these days for that to happen.
In 2001, coinciding with the last of our episodes today, we had Hannibal, the follow-up to Silence of the Lambs. Was February 9th, 2001. Another movie, quick turnaround, Scary Movie 2 came out, and they basically just slotted it right into the same spot in the next year for July 4th, 2001. And then Jeepers Creepers was August 31st, 2001. And real quick, just because I want to double check, 1999 in the movies. List of American films, just because like I know Scary Movie also did like crazy weird box office number, but it was not number 10, or it was not in the top 10. So, just Blair Witch Project at number 10 with 140 million, and even that like 140.5 million domestic gross, not really a huge deal today. Huge deal in 1991, and then The Sixth Sense was almost $300 million in 1991. Behind Phantom Menace's 431 million. And above Toy Story 2's 245 million. And then number 4, Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me. Sure. 1999, a wild year. Episodes have a runtime typically of 23 minutes. Treehouse of Horror episode 10 comes between the episodes Guess Who's Coming to Criticize Dinner, aka the one where Homer becomes a food critic, and EI Annoyed Grunt, which I believe would have been EI Doe. And that is the Tamako episode, if you recall that.
Oh, the Tamako episode was so good.
Yeah. Episode 11 comes between the season 11 finale Behind the Laughter, aka the Behind the Music parody, and A Tale of Two Springfields, when Springfield gets a new area code and the Who comes to town to play in old or new Springfield. And just fun little fact that I threw in here for us Arizona people. So that was 2000 is when that one releases. Arizona, or like Phoenix, split its 602 area code into 602, 480, and 623 in 1999.
Yep.
So I, as somebody who grew up as a 602 number, suddenly was a 480 number.
Yep.
And felt very seen by this episode.
Yeah, this episode felt like
why do I have to change? They're the ones who suck, kind of thing.
Yep. Very much like Anvil was hot for this episode for local Phoenix people.
Yep. And then Treehouse of Horror episode 12 comes between the season 12 finale, Tall Tales, where a train hobo tells various tall tales to the Simpsons family in another anthology-style episode, and The Parent Rap, where a Judge Judy-like character orders Bart and Homer be tethered together after some shenanigans that Bart pulls. Our roll call, the who's who of the projects. Our director for Treehouse of Horror episode 10 is Pete Michaels, who directed 11 episodes between 1997 and 2003. Then he would go on to do 67 episodes of Family Guy between 99 and 2013, and more recently has done 20 episodes of Rick and Morty between 2013 and 2015. And then Jim Reardon is also the supervising director on these first couple episodes. He did and directed and worked on 187 episodes between 1990 and 2005. Director of Treehouse of Horror episode 11 is Matthew Nastuk, who has directed 63 episodes between 1998 all the way through 2024. So he's still occasionally hopping into the director's chair with them. And then Jim Reardon, who I mentioned already, is the sole director on episode 12. Our writers for these 3 episodes, we have for Treehouse of Horror episode 10, Donick Carey wrote the I Know What You Diddly Iddly Did. He wrote 34 episodes between 96 and 1999, including Hell to Pay from last year's Treehouse of Horror, Treehouse of Horror 9. Tim Long writes the Desperately Zeeking Xena episode, having also written 56 episodes of the show between 1998 and 2024. He also is credited on a lot of the Simpsons games, like Road Rage, Hit and Run, and the Simpsons game. And Ron Haug, or Hauge, I don't know, wrote the Life's a Glitch Then You Die sequence, having written 33 episodes between 1996 and 2000. In Treehouse of Horror episode 11, we have Rob Lazebnik writes Ghost Dad, having written 22 episodes between 2000 and 2023. John Frink and Don Payne write Scary Tales Can Come True. John Frink having written 38 episodes between 2000 and 2024. Don Payne wrote 18 episodes between 2000 and his unfortunate passing in 2013. But he also, prior to that passing, wrote the stories or screenplays for Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer, as well as Thor and Thor: The Dark World. And then Carolyn O'Mine wrote Night of the Dolphin, having written 27 episodes between 2000 and 2023. And in Treehouse of Horror episode 12, we have Joel H. Cohen writing Hex in the City, having written 68 episodes between 2001 and 2024. John Frink and Don Payne write House of Wax in that one. We already talked about them. And Carolyn O'Mine writes Whiz Kids in this one. So a couple that are repeat writers year over year on this run. Our cast of characters: Dan Castellaneta as Homer et al. Is up to 772 credited episodes. Julie Kavner as Marge, 771, and it's always the which one is Julie Kavner not in? Same with Nancy Cartwright as Bart, 771. Which one's she not in? Yeardley Smith has a couple more, 769 episodes, so she's missing 3 from the bunch. Hank Azaria as Moe and Others is 761 episodes, and Harry Shearer as Flanders and Others is 771 episodes and counting.
What episode are these people not in?
Yeah, it's always it's also IMDb just kind of doing their consolidation. So maybe there's one thing in Dan Castellaneta's credits credited to The Simpsons that's that's not really an episode.
Oh, okay.
It could absolutely be something like that, but it's always I never investigate it too deeply because I'm not going to look at 36 seasons of shows to try and find which one's he in that Julie Kavner is not credited in.
I would just think that they would there'd be some sort of trivia out there that would tell you that, but whatever.
And maybe there is. I just also haven't Googled it.
That's fair.
Maybe Google AI can absolutely tell me the wrong answer on that.
Nice.
Marsha Wallace, also credited here, Edna Krabappel and many others, was in 172 episodes before her passing in 2013. Pamela Hayden as Milhouse is in 692 episodes and counting. Maggie Roswell as, among other things, Maude Flanders, which is also a weird thing to see Maude in this, knowing that she, is not long for the Simpsons world before her character passes away. 273 episodes between 1990 and 2023. Tress MacNeille as Agnes Skinner in 644 episodes between 90 and 2024. And Russie Taylor, who I often call out in these as Martin Prince, was in 193 episodes between 1990 and her passing in 2019. And then a couple cameos here. We have, of course, in Treehouse of Horror 10, we have Lucy Lawless, Dick Clark, Tom Arnold, and Frank Welker. as Frank Welker in particular being Werewolf Flanders, and he has done all the others are like one and dones, but Frank Welker, because he is one of those like he's every animal for everything until D. Bradley Baker comes along and is kind of now doing that role. But Frank Welker, 20 episodes of The Simpsons between 1991 and 2014. And then these days, he's much more on the Futurama side of things, because he's the voice of Nibbler, among other things.
Makes sense.
No cameos in Treehouse of Horror 11, but then in Treehouse of Horror 12, of course, we have a brief bit by Matthew Perry, rest in peace, and then, of course, Pierce Brosnan as the more permanent voice of the Smart House. And then, lastly, before we get into the episodes themselves, bit of trivia. As we often do in the Simpsons episodes, I call out the chalkboard message. No chalkboard messages among these three, as they often have their kind of, different intros. Same with the sofa gag. In the sofa gag in Treehouse of Horror 10, we get Kang and Kodos hosting their, variety special thing. And then it cuts away from that to the family watching it on the couch. And each member of the family is dressed up as something from a previous Treehouse of Horror special, save Lisa, who is just dressed up as an axe victim. She's not been an axe victim in the other episodes, but Homer is the Jack-in-the-Box that I alluded to earlier. Marge is the Bride of Frankenstein. Maggie is her Kang Kodos alien baby form. And then Bart is the Flyhead from, I think, one of the ones from last year, maybe from a couple years ago. But yeah, basically where he goes in. It's the one that's the Fly.
The Fly. It's the Fly.
No couch gag in 11, but we do get the opening as an homage to the Munsters, featuring Homer as Herman Munster, Marge as Lily, Lisa as Marilyn, the normal one, Bart as Eddie Munster, and Grandpa as Grandpa Munster, and then a fun little gag of the townsfolk coming by and killing everybody, save Lisa, who's just the normal one, so she gets to, live another day. And then no couch gag per se in episode 12, but we do get a little sequence talking where Burns is trying to get Smithers to hang something up in a very precarious position. He gets it hung and then gets slid down into an electrical thing that launches a whole fire. Sequence of events that launches a parapet into the Burns mausoleum. That expels a few coffins. The Simpsons arrive to trick or treat, with Homer and Marge being Fred and Wilma Flintstone, Lisa and Maggie being conjoined twins, and Bart being a hobo. Simpsons see the fire and skeletons and flee, and then they get sliced apart by the gate in a silly little horror gag. So yeah, those are our little usual gags that we get in these bits. In episode 10 specifically, obviously, I Know What You Did, Italy Did is an homage to I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Yep.
Desperately Zeking Xena draws heavily from the Fantastic Four in terms of the power set that the kids get. And then Life's a Glitch Then You Die draws from the fear around the Y2K problem. It was going to see a lot of computer programs that had only been coded with a 2-digit year suddenly start thinking that 1/1/1/00 was going to be 1/1900 and mess up a ton of calculations instead of 1/2000.
Yep.
Fortunately, it did not end up being nearly as detrimental as we thought it was going to be.
No, because guess what? People were like, "Oh, this would be a big problem," a couple of years ahead of time.
Yeah,
and they all did the work.
Yeah.
But that didn't stop my dad from asking my brother and I to fill up 6 gigantic barrels of water from hose water.
We so you've been over to my parents' house.
Yes, I have.
I don't think you've seen this part of it, but when you walk in, there's a little side room on the right hand side that's basically an extension on the house that was a storage, basically add-on storage room to the house. And we jokingly called that our Y2K room when I was in high school and stuff.
Nice.
Because that's where my parents would go and buy tons of cans of soup when they're on sale or something, and they would just kind of keep the food stuff and keep storage stuff in there. And so because it had soup and rations and stuff like that and water bottles, it was okay, yeah, if shit goes down, that's our Y2K supplies. But yeah, it's mostly just storage. For one Christmas, we got an air hockey table from probably a Costco or Sam's Club or something like that. We had the air hockey table in there for a while, and that was a fun little thing. But yeah, just a big old storage unit.
Our family was my parents used to do catering as a additional side hustle, And they were doing so much catering that they turned our detached garage into like a catering kitchen to do prep work. And by the time they stopped doing that, it was then just converted into storage, rather than like reconverted back to a garage, because we had done like a paved driveway, open driveway on the other side of the house at that point. And so it was just storage. It was basically a quarter of it was Christmas stuff, because my parents, like I've talked about it plenty of times before, way too much Christmas shit. Just way too much.
Sure.
Like to the point where like after growing up, I did not really celebrate anything Christmas out of like post trauma of like growing up with way too much Christmas. I'm not going into it at this point. Then the rest of it was like additional stuff, but then most of it was like a half that garage room was just food storage, because one, my parent, like, you know, there's other reasons, but the main reason was we had 5 kids growing up, plus additional kids that would be like kind of like hanger-ons or like temporary children in the family. Like friends who, like my sister, her best friend lived with us for the last year and a half of high school because her mom had to move states for a job. Like that was not an uncommon thing that happened in my family.
Extended quote unquote family.
Yeah, pretty much. And so like my parents did the same thing. It's like, this is on sale from Costco. Cool. Buy a pallet of it.
But did you call that room the Y2K room?
No.
There you go.
No, we just called it the garage. Yes, that's what it was.
Yep. Anyway.
Sorry, yours is cooler name.
No, it was just a fitting on theme name for the topic at hand.
The Y2, I did call those the Y2K barrels though.
There you go.
Because we had them for way longer than we should have.
Sure. More trivia in the Desperately Zeking Xena segment. Dr. Frink questions Lucy Lawless on a scene change which involves 2 different horse braids, and Lucy responds with, "Well, when you see that, a wizard did it," which has become a popular media trope to explain away continuity errors in nerd circles. And then also in Desperately Zeking Xena, the Collector, aka Comic Book Guy, has the following prisoners preserved in Mylar bags: Leonard Nimoy as Spock, Bob Denver as Willie Gilligan from Gilligan's Island, the Robot from Lost in Space 1965, Jerry Ryan as Seven of Nine from Star Trek, series creator Matt Groening, and Tom Baker as the 4th Doctor Who, and then Yasmine Bleeth as lifeguard Carolyn Holden from Baywatch. In Treehouse of Horror 11, Scary Tales Can Come True obviously draws from the Grimm's fairy tales, specifically Hansel and Gretel and Goldilocks and the 3 Bears. And Night of the Dolphin draws from, among other things, The Day of the Dolphin, The Birds, Jaws, and of course we get a little homage to Free Willy. The Witch in Scary Tales Can Come True segment claims to have a boyfriend named George Cauldron, a reference to a famous Brady Bunch episode, The Not So Ugly Duckling, where Jan Brady has a make-believe boyfriend named George Glass. However, George Cauldron, unlike George Glass, turns out to be a real person, not just a made-up name. As I said, this is the first Treehouse of Horror episode to be released in November. Also features the 5th time Groundskeeper Willie has died in a Treehouse of Horror episode after dying in all 3 stories of Treehouse of Horror 5 and in one of the Treehouse of Horror 6 stories. Here he is just straight up impaled by a dolphin. Then in Treehouse of Horror 12, we have Hex and the City, inspired by Thinner, a Stephen King novel. House of Wax draws from 2001: A Space Odyssey and Demon Seed, and maybe 1999's Smart House Disney Channel original movie. And Whiz Kids, of course, is heavily influenced by Harry Potter. And in the timeline of Harry Potter things, this was basically between books 4 and 5, so between The Goblet of Fire, which released in 2000, and Order of the Phoenix, released in 2003, because this was November of 2001. And it also pretty much coincided with the release of the first movie 10 days later. The Simpsons episode came out November 6th, and Sorcerer's Stone would come out in America November 16th of that year. So basically, especially given the lead time that Simpsons animation, especially at that time, had, they had, they'd been gearing up to be like, hey, this is going to hit right at the time that Harry Potter is going to be peak zeitgeist there in 2001. Other trivia: Matthew Perry is the 2nd main cast member of Friends to have been a guest voice on The Simpsons with this appearance, first having been Lisa Kudrow, who provided the voice of Alex Whitney in the season 10 premiere episode Lard of the Dance. According to IMDb, Pierce Brosnan roles was Pierce Brosnan's role was originally intended for Sean Connery, whereas at the time of airing, Brosnan was the incumbent actor playing James Bond. Of course, Connery was the first actor to play the role. I don't know how much I buy that, but I guess it could be they could have like rewritten it to be more favorable of Sean Connery, but I think I like that it's the Pierce Brosnan.
I think it works.
Current young sexy thing that Marge has a crush on.
Yes.
Because it would have been way creepier if it was 60-something Sean Connery crushing on Marge and trying to kill Homer so that he can, sleep with have the house somehow sleep with the wife or whatever.
Yeah, I straight up do not believe that it was dated for Sean Connery.
That's why I specifically pulled in according to IMDb, this is what we have listed here as trivia. But so that's what I have for the trivia. So let's go kind of episode by episode here. Cam, what did you think here? What stands out? What fun highlights do you have from starting with episode 10, Treehouse of Horror 10? This is the I Know What You Diddly Did, the Desperately Seeking Xena, and the Y2K one. Any standout moments from those?
I'm trying to recall if there's ever been one that was... I guess the last year, the one that we did, which was like the one with Maggie was actually an alien. That's where we're getting more into like the sci-fi aspect of it. But this is where like you have two of them that lean way further into like the sci-fi aspect of it, whether it's like the comic book version of it or it's the like the Y2K one. I think that the Y2K one has to work as in how like the Treehouse of Horror episode. Because it doesn't work. Like the jokes only work if you're really gonna like murder Bart and Homer at the end.
Yeah.
And so you have to follow that falls into it fine. The superhero one felt off to me in a way.
It's not horror so much, yeah.
And it's not even like it's so loosely tangential to Halloween even.
Yeah.
Like that's
like costumes. There's lots of costume stuff.
Like the Y2K horror apocalypse is coming. Like that fits with the theme of like Treehouse of Horror and everything.
Sure.
But like when it comes to that one, that's the one I was like, this is really weird. The only one I can think of that was like that I can think of like that works with is the Futurama episode where they do superpowers.
Yeah. I found myself thinking about that a lot in this. I was like, oh, they just do like they just do this exact same kind of beat structure in that episode of Futurama.
Except it's way better in Futurama. It's
because they have a fun full episode with it. It's not part of their like anthology thing.
And so like I just don't think this one works as well. But I do love that we get Lucy Lawless.
Yeah.
Outright setting a trend, being like a wizard did it. Like shout out to her.
Yeah.
But also that it's a
and then I love the closing gag of this one of like Xena can fly. I told you I'm not Xena. I'm Lucy Lawless. just setting up that Lucy Lawless can fly. Absolutely a lovely beat there.
So good, but also shout out to her like rescuing herself in the theme of Xena. Like Xena doesn't get rescued. Xena rescues herself.
Yeah.
She needed the distraction. She got the distraction. Got comic book guy to like going for the kiss, and she grabbed his lips and everything and like beat him up.
This is also like in the spectrum of time frame, the comic book guy collector. This is again October of 1999. So the double-bladed lightsaber that he's pulling out is the hot toy that summer from the Phantom Menace that came out earlier that year. As opposed to, and then I love that. Like, I mean, I had a double-bladed lightsaber toy, so
I got it for my birthday that year.
Yeah. So yeah, shout outs to that. And then of course the like, oh my God, you took it out of its packaging. Oh no. And that being like his undoing.
Yep. Fits perfectly with it. Yeah.
I do love, I love the beat when they're being lowered into the thing. And Bart's like trying to escape and he's trying to like lose himself. And Lisa's like, save yourself. And he's like, what do you think I've been trying to do?
Yeah. Full Bart isn't there.
Full Bart beats. Yeah. When Lucy Lawless is getting sucked up into the collector's
when she's like
must remove my breastplate, and all the other guys, all the nerds below are like, ooh, maybe later.
Straight up like yep, because that's who, like when you talk about people going to Comic-Cons back in the day, this was the stereotype. This was definitively the stereotype.
It's still, I think,
Oh,
a
it's
little
there.
on the nose. Like,
Yes.
I found myself
Yeah, no.
watching this one thinking, like, the more things change, the
The
more
more
they stay the
same.
same. For a lot of these kinds of beats. Because there's a lot of, like, the collector is basically just an incel.
Yes, 100%.
Kind of thing, trying to, like, kidnap a woman. Shout out to the Xena Needs Zex line. Yeah, as I said, interesting in the I Know What You Diddly Did with killing Ned, just seeing Maude there and the whole bit of like Homer like weekends at burning
Yes.
the body so that he can fake the death of Ned, and then Maude's already gone inside and so he has to just do it again in the front door.
It's good. That one I think is the best one of the three, in my opinion.
It's easily the most horror-y.
For sure. But it's also just like the gag of, like, we have to tell the cops it was an accident. They'll never believe that a Simpson accidentally killed Ned Flanders. Like,
Marge hitting it, immediately being please be a dog.
Yep. Which ties into it being a werewolf. Like, it's all these wonderful little like connective tissues that make that episode, like that sequence work so well.
Yeah.
Over the other two. And I feel like
and I like the twist of Ned having transformed into a werewolf, and that's why he's back. Kind of like that little extra beat. Especially like I'm 99/100% certain that's not the twist.
That is not the twist.
I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Definitively, that is not
never
the
actually
twist.
sit down and watched I Know What You Did Last Summer. It is the like, how does that guy? Why is that guy still hunting these kids? Kind of thing, or whatever. But lots of fun in that one. Shout out to the beat that after Ned dies, Mo calls or tries to call Maude or whatever to to just be a creep. Just Mo just being a big old creepy creep. And then in the Y2K thing, a shout out to just the absurdity of Homer being the one in charge of Y2K compliance, and Homer's computer, of course, breaking everything else.
Mm-hmm.
I love the gag of Wiggum being the one to be like, "Hey, everybody, they're looting in town." And like, let's go. Just perfect stuff for that. The absurdity of the fact that Krusty was chosen for Operation Exodus. And then I love the little runner of like, I'm not dead, very much in a like a Monty Python kind of vibe for that one. Lisa being, a planned guest on that ship.
She's the proofreader.
Yeah, she's the proofreader. But I'm sorry, you can only bring one of your parents. Mom. I pick Mom immediately.
Yep.
And then I love Homer's rebuttal there. Remember me as I am with murderous rage. And then, shout out to the other spaceship that has, a voice cameo from Tom Arnold in on the gag, but also has like Carrot Top and like a ton of other, D-list celebrities. Rosie O'Donnell's on there as the like D-list celebrities being shot into the sun. And Homer and Bart being like, I don't want to wait the extra 5 minutes until we burn to a crisp. Let's hit the eject button and explode out into space. So we move on to Treehouse of Horror, episode 11. Again, we get the monsters opening here. Then we have Ghost, Scary Tales Can Come True, and Night of the Dolphin. What do you think about these ones, Cam?
I like these ones a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
These ones, I feel like the Dolphin one especially is, I feel like, an underrated one that, like, I don't know if people like look back on it fondly, but I do.
It's definitely one I like. I could have gone through like, top 50 or whatever, and I would not have thought of this one, but it's absolutely a good one. It's just, it doesn't like it. And maybe it's because like, oh, I'm not a huge Hitchcock fan or whatever. And so the birds being done, but with dolphins really doesn't do anything for me. Apart from like, I will say I've pulled the thumbnails for this episode, and the one I'm pulling is basically like the Simpsons walking out with all of the dolphins just staring at them.
Which is a classic Hitchcock scene.
Yeah. It's almost like the cutaways that we see of like dozens of dolphins just standing there staring at everybody is very much like in the same position as the birds when you walk out of a building in the birds and see just all of them standing there staring at the people.
Yep. I will say there is something interesting tying it to the birds is one of the first classes I ever took in college was an English class, but the English class was we just watched movies. It was run by a teacher I had who referred to herself in the third person all the time.
Okay.
And her teaching portrait, the portraits when you walk into like a department office, they have like the professional photos of each professor or like of each head of a department or anything.
No, I don't. I
Sure.
don't recall seeing that a lot.
That's fine. They had all of them, and then all of a sudden hers was her. It was like landscape, and it was her with like one of those dogs that is like tall and thin and has like a shit ton of hair, like long hair.
Yeah.
It was her with one of those dogs, and they're like laying on their side and posing. And I'm just like, how is this her professional portrait that they hang up here?
Sure.
Weird, super weird. Made me think that college was always going to be that weird. It was, but just in completely different ways. That was just like, that's still to this day my most absurd teacher I've ever had. But one of the things she had us read was a like lesser known research article about how the birds is actually a metaphor for post. I'm a bad queer man for not remembering the bar in New York, which started the riots of rock something. I'm trying to remember what it was, but it was like a big event in like queer liberation.
Not Plymouth Rock. No.
It was
I'm Googling it. So
thank you.
I'll
vamp. I got you.
Keep talking.
I'll vamp it. And when we're reading it, it's basically like a post this, and so it's supposed to be an analogy of like the antagonistic, riotous, like
Stonewall.
Thank you, Stonewall. Yeah, Stonewall Tavern in New York, and it was basically it's like that riot happened, and that was the first big like gay riot revolution thing that helped launch the gay rights movement in America. And it's basically like, this is a post Stonewall interpretation of like queer people and like menacing a straight white woman who is like this. And so I read it, and like we watched the movie the first time as just a movie. And then the second time we read it after we all read this as a class. And so the scene is forever in my mind cemented as I see like an alternative version of a bunch of like very stereotypical dressed like queer guys like menacingly looking at like this like straight blonde woman as she's walking through the street. And like to the point of I'm like, at the time I was like, this is like, and I just laughed during that scene, which was like, before I was like, this is a horrifying scene. Birds are like pecking at a woman and like assaulting her. And then all I saw was like a bunch of gay guys like just like doing that, and it was just, I'm like, what was a horror movie before is now like a weird parody movie for me in my head now.
Yeah. So now watch this scene in The Simpsons and imagine all of those dolphins dressed as like YMCA characters.
Basically, yeah, that's like the image in my head. So that reminded me of this. I haven't thought about Yvonne, which was the teacher's name, in many, many years. And then I saw this episode, watched it, and I was like, why is this making me think of gay men? I'm like, am I gay right now? Is this what's happening? Like, am I in that part of my spectrum? And I'm like, am I there right now? And I'm like, no, I'm not. But like, so why am I thinking of gay men? And there we go. That's it. That's the reason why it's like, I'm like, Yvonne.
There you go. Yeah,
I won't say her last. I do remember her last name. I'm not going to say it out loud though.
Sure. Yeah, I love just the brutality of the dolphins in this one. And the fact that like, Snorky was like, the king of the dolphins, prince,
the prince who was taken from them,
the king or whatever.
Yep. They also one of the dolphins says like, "Are you going to be magnanimous and get an offer forgiveness?" And he's like, "No."
Yeah. Yeah.
Shout out to me like Lisa setting me free does not give her a pass.
Yeah. People please, we're all frightened and horny. Being a great line from Mayor Quimby there. Phenomenal stuff. Lisa saying, I kind of wish I hadn't freed their leader and doomed mankind. And then, just going back to the other ones, I love the runner in the Ghost Dad one of like, Homer being excited to get a compliment from like his sexy coworker, ooh, Lenny. And then we sure enough get Lenny, complimenting Homer later. But then also just the specificity of which like everything is pointing to Homer's about to die.
Yeah.
His horoscope being like, you're going to die. And then Marge's being like, your husband's going to die. And the premise of like, okay, you like go back, you have one day to do like one good deed. And Homer being killing somebody inadvertently being like, I'm pretty sure he was going to be the next Hitler.
It was not Edna.
Agnes
Skinner's mom.
Agnes Skinner, She he tries to carry her over across the street or whatever and drops her.
And like they don't show it, but she does land right on the top of the scout troops' flag.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh.
Yeah. The idea of broccoli killing Homer, then ghost Homer going back, eating the broccoli again and dying again.
Yep. You now have 23 hours.
Yeah.
It didn't take you an hour, but you've lost an hour for being an idiot.
Yeah. I love the bit of like Homer trying to figure out what to do. And whoever it is like giving him ideas and Homer being like, I'm not running for Jesus.
It's Marge. He goes to Marge and she's like, Marge, what should I do? Do you have to talk like that? Well, I guess not. No.
Yeah. And then, well, I'll be damned at the end. Yes, you will. And then we see him, of course, sent to hell.
Because Peter wasn't watching when Homer saved the baby.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah.
And then scary tales can come true, I think, touching on the previous episode. This is like, oh, yeah, they do a little bit of like macabre stuff with this. Especially... It falls very much in line with the Mickey one that we did at the beginning of this month, in terms of like the
scary stories,
the scary story Hansel and Gretel, which is kind of thing, but it's not Halloweeny so much. But I do love I love the simplicity of, oh, this one's too hot, oh, this one's too cold. Well, it doesn't take a genius to do this, and it's Bart that is like that decides something that millions of children never think to do when they hear the story of Goldilocks of, let's just put these two together and they'll equal out. And now I have 2 giant servings of a room temperature thing that is just right instead of just one measly thing that is just right at the end.
Perfect. Also, shout out to, well, what happened to Goldilocks?
Yeah. And then Goldilocks absolutely getting mauled by the bears at the end.
There's that. Also, shout out to, well, do you know when she'll be ready? I'll give her another 20 minutes. Turns it on high. Yeah. But I think my favorite one from this section is, say hello to your other brother and sister.
Yeah. And then we see the skeletons of I have I took that same note. Say hi to your other brother and sister. Mo as the troll being so desperately lonely.
Came on too strong again.
Yep. And then Homer gets one over on the witch and gets her in the oven. She'll be ready in about 20 minutes. Absolutely great.
Shout out to George Cauldron.
Bart. The note I took, I'm like, what the hell does at least stop wasting yourself mean? And then I realized, autocorrect changed basting to wasting.
Shout out to him, like pulling out the beaker and putting on it. Like, why are you stop basting yourself at least? Like,
don't make this easier for her. So we get to Treehouse of Horror 12, the third of our trilogy this year. Again, the Burns and Smithers opening we already talked about. We get Hex and the City. I love the ethnic town. They just straight up call it ethnic town, and it's just the classic New York tropes of all sorts of different 1900s salespeople selling apples, cholera, babies for sale.
This isn't a baby. You shaved a dog.
Yeah. The fortune teller being like, "Are you a cop? You got to tell me if you're a cop." I will say this is the one, and we don't cover it too much because fortunately we're not watching a ton of things that this doesn't hold up. The fact that gypsy is much more of a derogatory term in 2024. And this would be more like Romani or something like that.
Yeah.
Is I was like, oh, that's a I know this was not done with any sort of mean spirit or malice in that vein, but it's very much they probably wouldn't use that term these days.
As somebody who I don't want to say inherited, but like there's been a culture of like Eastern, like my mom's side of the family has a lot of Eastern European stuff to it, and one of it is like a like straight up like racist like it treatment and thoughts of Romani people that I grew up with, and I just was like, well, yeah, like, you know, like they're thieves and they're degenerates, and like that was it took, and I'm not even joking, it was like 9 years of my life where that was like a thing that I just thought. And because there's not an enormous Romani population here in the Phoenix Valley, I went my entire life without ever meeting a Romani person. And then, but all of a sudden I said that to some coworkers, and they're like, that's really racist. And I'm like, no, it's not. And they're like, insert any other like ethnic group in there, and it's racist. And it was like this is all at the same time that I became like aware of like also like the anti-Turk sentiment that I was raised with. And it's like, and the thing is, it wasn't like over, like there was not like things said at the dinner table about this. It was the very subvert, like my dad once made a joke that my mom was a quote unquote like Romani, but not the word Romani, princess after like that. And my mom like flipped out at him. Like, I do not say that. And it's like, so it's a lot of like this undercurrent of like cultural, like Eastern European racism that like, so this one triggered me. I was like, oh,
it's one that like, I mean, yeah, again, we don't have a huge Romani population, so it's not really anything I have ever directly interfaced with or anything like that. And it was really just a few years ago, probably, where that got pointed out in something as like, hey, that term's not cool. And it was kind of one of those like, oh, is that? I didn't know that was I didn't know it was a thing until I did like the looking up and the research for it. Because yeah, like I grew up with this and all sorts of like these kinds of, you know, reflections of those stereotypes. Obviously, Hunchback in the Notre Dame,
big one right there.
You know, another big major one there.
That's what caused my dad to call my mom a Romani princess, and my mom did not react well.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, like there's a lot of like, it's interesting. Like, yes, there is a lot of like weird, like European flavored racism that we institutionalized and we're like just really okay with for a really long time up until real recently.
Yeah.
And one of those is definitely Romani stuff. And it's to the point where like looking, like I definitely had to curtail some of my language when I made that decision of like, I'm going to actively be cognizant of this.
That's weird because that is not like that. Maybe it was such a shock to me because I'm like, oh, who is going around saying that to people? Like who's going around and using those words as like epithets against people?
Oh, no, not
against
against people. I was using terms like gypped.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And other things like stuff like that. And some, because I mentioned that at the time that I was called out for it. And they're like, that's like you said you got Jewed by something. And I was like, whoa.
And that was something that like, I think in that same vein, like I hadn't even put together that was a reference to the term gypsy or something like that. It was like, it was just, it was a word that I didn't have the etymology for to know that it was like an offensive term, compared to so many others, that it is like, oh, that is obviously pulling from here. And it's certainly obvious in hindsight. It was just one of those like, oh, because that wasn't any sort of culture around me. It was never something I thought about. But yeah, so seeing that and getting that like such a dominant presence in this particular episode was the like, oh, this is the
word on the nose,
one
and
of the rare
yeah.
ones we get where it's like, oh, this feels of certainly a different place and time, that would be, I think, probably,
2002.
I think that 2001. I think it would be. I think they would rethink or recharacterize stuff because it's also, I mean, like they've had that fortune teller character over many different episodes. Like most famously, I think of the one where she predicts, the future where Lisa's the president or something like that, in an episode, and we get that kind of like mysterious thing. So,
well, it's
very much in 2024 they would, I think, be a little bit more culturally sensitive about it, especially given that they don't have Hank Azaria playing Apu anymore and stuff like that. Like they're absolutely tend to be on the right side of history in terms of like hearing the criticisms and hearing this and examining their thoughts and saying, okay, yeah, it doesn't take us anything to make this change. Similar to like I remember another case being like in Family Guy, people getting up in arms about like a white guy playing the voice of Cleveland from the Family Guy, and then on to the Cleveland show where they were like, hey, yeah, maybe that isn't a great look. Maybe we should switch that up. So
Yep. But also it's important to also note that a lot of it is not coming from a place of like anti-Romani sentiment, because that Romani fortune teller goes back to like the Wolfman. Like we're talking like film and media, like almost 100 years, like close enough to like closer to 100 than 50 years
there
ago.
is also the extra layer of like, oh, the shrunken head thing, not a great look here.
Oh, that too, yeah.
In
also doesn't culturally fit with Romani stuff either.
Certainly, yeah.
So
but in terms of other things in here, I do love the like all the kids freaking out and at Marge's beard and Marge being like, so it is noticeable. Fun little gag there. The payoff at the end of like they've lost their son. Homer or Bart's neck was like so stretched out that it killed him in whatever form or fashion. And Marge saying like all you have to do is she said all you have to do is apologize, and Homer still being obstinate and refusing. But hey, they get their little happy ending with the leprechaun, which also some questionable stereotype issues there too.
Yep. 100%.
Then we get into the House of Wax, the fun little smart house thing.
This one I liked a lot. I liked this one a ton.
Yeah, this is a fun one. Shout out to the other voices being Matthew Perry. One of them being Dennis Miller. Is that the voice that caused all those suicides? Murder suicides. And then I love, and this would have been, I'm sure, a reason for Logan to go on like a 5-minute tangent, but I love Marge's 007 reference being George Lazenby. And then everybody being like, no, Pierce Brosnan. And then we get just the wonderful cameo from Pierce Brosnan, fully in on the joke, especially a fun, carryover from our show, since we did Mrs. Doubtfire not too long ago as well. And then Marge being like, oh, I liked you in Remington Steele. He was in Remington Steele, right? Yep. So yeah, my note here was perfect episode for Logan to be back for. Wah, wah.
Dope.
We get the introduction of the Chekhov's saw blade in the dinner table.
Great. So good.
As they clean up the mess really quickly. This really speaks to, I don't buy that this was originally done for Connery, because it would not have it all. No. It would have a way different, grosser connotation to have Sean Connery's voice, leerily gazing at Marge as she's getting naked for a bath, compared to charming young Pierce Brosnan's voice.
Still bad, still problematic, still not cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Still but like, great. But like
less gross.
Not great in the context of, he's being the HAL robot, just a little bit more sexy. Versus
that would not have worked with
especially given that like Connery didn't have the best relationship with women in general, in terms of like the stories around him, like slapping, sometimes like saying something to the effect of like a woman needs a good slap sometimes or something like that. Not the greatest guy in that context, especially. But I do love the extended bit of Homer talking to the Pierce house and being like, if I die, man or machine, somebody's going to look after Marge. Machine, huh? And then like Homer like comes back after a long beat to say, yep, a machine. And then the house goes to murder him. And we see that that Pierce has taped the little like HAL console over the picture of Homer in the photo.
So good.
But Homer comes back. Dad, that's the water softener. Well, I am missing the back of my head. I think you could give me some slack. And then ultimately, the real horror of the situation, the Pierce Brosnan CPU being sacrificed to Patty and Selma, and I forget which one of them putting the self-destruct button in her bosom, looking for this. and then Pierce Brosnan just having to suffer from that. Anything else in that one you want to shout out?
No, I mean, I think we nailed that one. It's a fun one. I think it's one of the better ones of this. I think is definitively the best one of this episode. I just feel like it just touches on great horror elements, great sci-fi elements. I think it just nails it across.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, yeah, obviously the fact that like the main inspiration there being Hal from Space 2001: Space Odyssey, of course.
What if we made Hal sexy and put it in charge of a house?
Yep.
There you go.
And then the last one we got Whiz Kids, the Harry Potter send up. Like weirdly doesndoesn't hit on as many Harry Potter things
Not
as
at
I would have
all.
expected.
This is so not Harry
Like you
Potter.
have like Lord, they don't even call him like Burnsmort or whatever, but it's like he's clearly Voldemort, but it's Burns, and Smithers is his snake. We have Milhouse with the invisibility cloak that just turns his clothes invisible. Skinner's using the amnesia dust a couple times to make everybody forget about that. I do like Bart casting the spell like destroy the evil one, and lightning zaps him, not me. I do always remember two images from this one. The grotesque frog creature that's basically like, kill me, please kill me. Every moment I live is an agony. Lord Montemort is what they call him. But then also the slow Smithers sadly eating the body of Voldemort or Montemort. Together we'll be like we'll be together in death or whatever. As he's slowly weeping and consuming the body. Trying to think anything else here. I think those. Oh, I did take a note. I like that. Like, Smithers is like, "Do you want to have that, lunch with Satan or whatever?" And Burns is like, "No, his wife's got a screenplay that she's trying to sell. I don't want to talk." Like very like inside baseball thing there. And then we get the closing beat of the Leprechaun jumping into this story, and then the real like credits thing of the Leprechaun and Pierce like bonding as the guest stars for the episode. Love that little like on set quote unquote behind the scenes tag of Pierce being like so excited for the fruit basket they gave him or something. Good fun run of episodes here. Anything else you want to call out before we wrap up?
No, I think we're good to go. I mean, I think that it's always very fun to see these anthologies and put them together and like see like years back to back to back of like how do these things progress. I think my favorite is definitely going to be the second one. I think it just has the best overall lineup.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think we talked about this a little bit. Like this Treehouse of Horror episode 10 is technically in season 11, and that tends to be where people kind of point to like, oh, the golden years of Simpsons were up through season 10. So this is like the first kind of like after the golden years era of things that we're seeing. But these are all still like, I remembered all of these. I remembered watching all of these.
I would say
as they were coming out kind of thing. So like they're certainly not ones again that I like remember too fondly or think back on too much. But watching them, there's still a pleasantness to them. And there's also the great thing about the Treehouse of Horror structure is that, hey, if something's not for you, wait 7 minutes. Maybe the next thing will be. Like the whole anthology on a half-hour sitcom just works well in that regard. And the fact that they are fun short stories means that they're typically just like hitting very top-level beats and just joke to get through it and be done with it. And they have, as we touched on, they've run out of a lot of like the classic horror stories.
For sure,
so they're dipping more into sci-fi or other things in this era. But it's still like a good fun time to see, where they draw their inspiration from. Looking ahead to like the next year's run of things, you have an episode based on like Multiplicity, one based on the island of Dr. Moreau, one based on the idea of the Grim Reaper, another Frankenstein one, one based on a Twilight Zone episode, A Kind of Stopwatch. The Dead Zone being another Stephen King one. From Hell, an Alan Moore graphic novel, and Fantastic Voyage is basically like what we have to look forward to next year in episodes 13, 14, and 15. So we'll see how that all
Yeah, we'll see how it shakes out. Where we might be in some for a few D plus shows of suffering with these ones.
True. Yeah. Again, they clearly keep doing this because they, it's such a tradition at this point that like, yeah, they're always going to be able to find something to make a 7-minute thing about. And I think like one of the things I enjoy pulling the docs together for this is seeing the fact that like, oh, it is writers just kind of getting to make a pitch and, come in, do a, here's the short story thing I want to do. And so, yeah, sometimes you'll get like, oh, this is a first time, writer for an episode because they came in, they pitched this idea, and this was the thing they really got to, chew their teeth on, grind their teeth, whatever that phrase that I'm trying to find is. So yeah, some cool stuff there. So yeah, shout out to all of that.
Take a bite at?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Report card grading from A+ to F. What do you want to give these episodes of Treehouse of Horror?
I think the A- for sure. No, because if we're talking about 9 of them, I'm probably gonna get I'm A-. I'm gonna stick with it. I think it works. Some of them don't especially work for me. They don't like stand out to me, but there are a couple of them that I think are just absolute gems. I think like the great example of that is like the dolphin one. The dolphin one is just like it just hits so many really funny beats to it. There's, I will say I really appreciate there's at least one big one in each of these episodes that really hits for me.
Yeah.
House of Wax, Dolphins one, and then I Know What You Diddly Did.
Diddly Idly Did.
Yeah, Diddly Idly Did. If those three were on a single episode, grand slam, like what an episode.
I didn't call it out when we were talking about it, but I love the runner of Homer just throwing extra diddlies in at the end of everything. And then we get Ned himself doing one at the end as well. That is just like a completely, detached from anything diddly.
Oh, and I have to give a final shout out to at the end of that one where Homer's getting eaten, and he says, and you hear like Ned Werewolf being like, "Urgh," and Homer's like, "Aha, it's too big for your stomach, eh, Wolfman?" It's like so, so good.
Yep. Homer even in death taunting.
Yep.
So yeah, I'll go A- as well. I think it's not it doesn't reach the full highs of some of the other Treehouse of Horror episodes that we've talked about in the past. But yeah, we're certainly not in any kind of like the doldrums of Simpsons or anything like that. And it's again, I think even when we get into like less renowned seasons, this I imagine is probably still always like a standout episode of the season. Probably because again, the format of it allows it to be. Hey, it doesn't have to fit in any sort of like continuity. They can just kind of go buck wild and tell whatever random stories they want to tell. So much so that, like, as I alluded to in the beginning sequence, like they started doing other anthology themed things, like the Tall Tales episode, like as the season finale, an episode prior that was basically like, oh, here's Homer as Paul Bunyan, and here's Bart as Johnny Appleseed or whatever. So that like they and even Futurama will go and do this kind of thing of like let's tell random little anthology episodes with the professor's weird little machine that does these hypotheticals just so they can,
what if machine
just so they can do like let's do a little 7-minute sketch that is a parody of a specific thing, but we don't want that to be in the same continuity of the grander universe.
Absolutely.
Like I even in these, I like that like one of them basically has like Kang and Kodos showing up for their tag and calling out the fact that it's like their obligatory tag. Like this is the episode they show up in every year, and what they almost left us out of one of these.
And it was like we got a spot for Old Navy.
It was the Kang Kodos appearance in Hex in the City, I think, of being like they're at the wedding, and that's how they get them into that episode. And neither of them want to be there for that one either. So yeah. Shout outs to these the Treehouse Horror things as always. Extra credit, other suggestions if you like this. There is, of course, the Simpsons movie, and then a whole bunch of the Disney Plus specific Simpsons shorts. May the 12th be with you, which was their weirdly on brand with the idea that like these episodes are airing after Halloween.
Yeah.
The May the 12th be with you being a Star Wars themed short that aired after May the 4th this year. It wasn't listed when I originally pulled it, but I'm going to pop it in here because it's a new short as well that I imagine is probably there if I like searched it now. It's called The Simpsons: The Most Wonderful Time of the Year, and it's like a Sideshow Bob featured Disney Plus little 3-minute thing.
Cool.
That just dropped this week. I imagine shout outs to our friend Ava, who probably did some animation on that because she's been working with them for a number of years and is credited on a lot of these shorts. The other shorts are The Simpsons Meet the Bocellis in Feliz Navidad.
And I'm trying to think. Ben posted something on Instagram where it was like her birthday or like
it's her birthday today.
Oh, it is her birthday today. Happy
Either
birthday,
today or
Ava.
yesterday. Yeah.
Happy birthday yesterday. Belated birthday.
Yeah. Welcome to the Club, the short, When Billy Met Lisa, The Simpsons in Plusiversary, The Good, the Bart, and the Loki, and The Simpsons Cross Bad Bunny, Te Deseo lo mejor. Basically,
I did not know that one existed, and now I'm really curious.
Yeah. It's a little Simpsons and Bad Bunny crossover. Again, like all these shorts are like 5 minutes or less probably, and they are all, hey, Disney bought the Simpsons, and
yeah.
While they were still, locked into Fox, rights on the episodes, they could do these things. And a lot of these things a lot of them tend to be like, oh, maybe they bring in like one cast member for it and you get like that cast member's voice with a guest star or something like that for a 3 to 5 minute thing. You could watch all these in like half an hour probably. But anyway, extracurriculars. The other thing we're watching on Disney Plus, we were talking about it a little bit before we started recording. You got caught up on Agatha All Along this week.
Yep, I did.
We're both caught up on it, and we will talk more at length next week, following the 2-part finale, because next week we're going to revisit that and discuss the full season. But shout out in particular, we're talking to this week's episode, big fun showcase for Patti LuPone, and just certainly the highlight of the season for me so far.
Absolutely.
So yeah, shout outs to that. And that is going to do it for this week's episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you, Cameron, for joining me to talk about The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror, Medley 4, aka Treehouse of Horror, 10, 11, and 12. You follow Cameron at RevCabot, 2 B's and 2 T's. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
Yeah, I want to give a massive shout out to our last episode of That Nerdy Site Show. We went over metaphor, kind of like these are our thoughts now. It was a really fun conversation, and I can't wait to potentially, we'll see how it goes for me this weekend, wrap up and finish and maybe do a spoiler cast this week.
Yeah. I would say I finished the game on Monday, so I'm certainly game and down to do a spoiler cast. I know typically we talk about like sitting down and recording Saturday before we do D&D, but if you haven't finished the game yet and you want to just swing back by Sunday after you finished it or something
that
like
might be the case. We'll see.
Maybe we'll do that this weekend.
It depends how tomorrow goes.
To give you that extra bit of time.
Yeah.
It took me, I want to say a little over, like, I think it was in like 82, 83 hours total was my playtime when I finished.
I'm past that as far as time-wise, but
I was also playing on like easy mode, so I probably didn't struggle as much in some of the later fights and stuff like that.
I will also say, like, I've also like left it up for like an hour or so, or like done something like,
Oh, the game clock's still going, but you're not actually playing.
Yeah, I'd probably say I probably have a good like maybe like 8 to 12 hours that is like me meandering through menus trying to like, what can I optimize? What can I do with that? So running around different towns, picking up different things, whatnot. So
yeah, you can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey and definitely check out kind of our previous kind of like talking up through the middle of the game, because that's where Cameron was at as of this last week. But then we will most likely be giving our wrap up thoughts slash some spoiler casty thoughts this week, this coming week on that Nerdy Site show. And then, as I said, Agatha all along, we will be doing our full season wrap up next week for that. And then we got be interesting to figure out what else we chat about here in November. A couple things that I'm thinking about and that I kind of proposed are there's a John Williams documentary that is releasing here beginning of November. And then we also still have the Jim Henson one that released a little while back, won an Emmy, or won multiple Emmys maybe. So we might sit down and do that one. So stay tuned for the things that we'll do here in November before we dive back into like holiday land for December, I'm sure. You follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. Once again, if you like what you heard, please remember to like, rate, review, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other. Class dismissed.